This is the story of Barnaby Brocket. And to understand Barnaby, first you have to understand his parents. Two people who were so afraid of anyone who was different that they did a terrible thing that would have the most appalling consequences for everyone they loved. We begin with Barnaby's father, Alistair, who considered himself to be a completely normal man. He led a normal life in a normal house, lived in a normal neighbourhood where he did normal things in a normal way. His wife was normal, as were his two children. Alistair had no time for people who were unusual or who made a show of themselves in public. When he was sitting on a metro train and a group of teenagers were talking loudly nearby, he would wait until the next stop, jump off and move to a different carriage before the doors could close again. When he was eating in a restaurant, not one of those fancy new restaurants with difficult menus and confusing food, a normal one, he grew irritated if his evening was spoiled by waiters singing "Happy Birthday" to some attention-seeking diner. He worked as a solicitor at the firm of Bother and Blasted in the most magnificent city in the world, Sydney, Australia, where he specialised in last wills and testaments, a rather grim employment that suited him down to the ground. It was a perfectly normal thing, after all, to prepare a will. Nothing unusual in that. When clients came to see him in his office, they often found themselves a little nervous, for drawing up a will can be a difficult or distressing matter. "Please don't upset yourself," Alistair would say on such occasions. "It's perfectly normal to die. We all have to do it one day. Imagine how awful it would be if we lived forever. The planet would collapse under all that excess weight." Which is not to say that Alistair cared very much about the planet's welfare. He didn't. Only hippies and New Age types worried about things like that. There is a belief held by some, particularly by those who live in the Far East, that each of us, you included, comprises one half of a couple separated before birth in the vast and complex universe, and that we spend our lives searching for that detached soul who can make us feel whole again. Until that day comes, we all feel a little out of sorts. Sometimes completeness is found through meeting someone who, on first appearances, seems to be the opposite of who we are. A man who likes art and poetry, for example, might end up falling in love with a woman who spends her afternoons up to her elbows in engine grease. A healthy eating lady with an interest in outdoor sports might find herself drawn to a fellow who enjoys nothing more than watching them from the comfort of his living-room armchair with a beer in one hand and a sandwich in the other. It takes all sorts, after all. But Alistair Brocket always knew that he could never share his life with someone who wasn't as normal as he was, even though that, in itself, would have been a perfectly normal thing to do. Which brings us to Barnaby's mother, Eleanor. Eleanor Bullingham grew up on Beacon Hill, in a small house overlooking the northern beaches of Sydney. She had always been the apple of her parents' eyes, for she was, indisputably, the best-behaved girl in the neighbourhood. She never crossed the street until the Green Man appeared, even if there wasn't a car anywhere in sight. She stood up to let elderly people take her seat on the bus, even if there were dozens of empty seats already available to them. In fact, she was such a well-mannered little girl that when her grandmother Elspeth died, leaving her a collection of 100 vintage handkerchiefs with her initials E.B. carefully embroidered onto each one, she resolved one day to marry a man whose surname also began with B, in order that her inheritance would not go to waste.